Thank you all for being here. My name is Brittany Hernandez, and I am your host for this Lightning Talk series in partnership with Gavel, formerly Documate. I'm a lawyer and a veteran, as well as the founder of Kramayim Law and Kramayim Kamai LLC, both of which focus on how innovations in tech can be used to solve human problems both within the law and beyond. I'm also the founder of Kramayim Academy, where we have Gavel certification courses and courses centered on no-code, low-code development. I'm also privileged to be Gavel's Global Ambassador to Law Schools and the Program Director and Senior Instructor of the Law Students in Legal Tech Access to Justice Fellowship. Today, Gavel's Head of Sales, Jon Jelenko, will discuss the topic, how to survive in the new tech-driven legal market, creating and marketing legal products. Feel free to post your questions in the chat as you think of them, and Jon will pick them up once he concludes. After questions, I'm just going to do a quick wrap up, after which you're free to stay on the call for an optional 5 minutes of speed networking, where we'll be just inviting a few people to introduce themselves for about 1 minute each. You can let me know in the chat if you'd like to introduce yourself during that portion of the call. Trisha will also be reaching out to different people during the presentation, just to see if you'd be interested in introducing yourself towards the end. I'd now like to introduce today's speaker. As I mentioned, Jon is currently the head of sales at Gavel. He is a legal technology evangelist who has spent most of his career working with law firms and in-house legal teams to help them advance their practices through the use of technology. He previously worked for Wolters Kluwer and Mitra Tech, so he also served in the U.S. Army for over 6 years. Thank you so much for being with us today. Jon, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Brittany. And I saw that we used the older headshot, but I'm really happy about how close it still looks. So thank you for that. Confidence boost to get us started here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and hopefully remember how to do it correctly. Okay, so hopefully you've got my slides up. Fantastic. Well, good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone, depending upon where you're sitting. As Brittany said, my name is Jon Jelenko. I'm the head of sales at Gavel. And I've worked in the legal technology space as a non-attorney for about the last decade. So I think I might have a somewhat unique perspective to offer on today's topic, which is, of course, how to survive in the new tech-driven legal market, how to create and market legal products. So I'm going to talk a bit about the power of legal products and how you can leverage a creative and innovative approach to better meet your clients' needs. And potentially even find new clients for whom the traditional full-service representation model doesn't work as well or at all. And I know a lot of you are already thinking about or engaging in legal productization. I mean, that's a decent chance that's why you're here. That's why you're a Gavel client. And we actually have some really great resources on the Gavel site for how to do this. But again, having spent a decade in legal technology as a non-attorney, I thought I might be able to highlight a few things today about how to think about legal productization from a more kind of sales and product-centric approach. So taking the attorney hat off and thinking about this from a product perspective. So with that in mind, what are we going to talk about today? So we'll set the table with a shared understanding of what a legal product is, right? And again, I'm sure that this is rehashing information for a lot of you that you're already very familiar with. But I think it's important to set the table with this mutual understanding before we kind of dive into how to go about the process of creating legal products. And if you're 100% sure that you already know everything that I'm about to say, I am going to be teasing a little bit of future Gavel functionality at the end. So set a timer for 15 minutes and wake yourself back up then if that's what you want to hear about. But after we've discussed kind of what a legal product is and established mutual understanding about what that is, then we're going to talk about step one, which is really understanding your customer. So before you start any kind of product-oriented activities at all, the first step is really understanding your customer and their problem, to quote Simon Sinek, starting with why. From there, we're going to move into how to create a unique and innovative value with your legal product, how to consider both innovation and efficiency in doing that. And then from there, once we've talked about how to create that legal product, the next logical step is how do we market that product and how do we leverage the power of storytelling to effectively do that? And while that might seem like the last step, once you've put your product out to market, as those of you who may be long-term Gavel clients know, it's really not ideally, right? The next step is iterating. It's continuing to keep your product viable long-term. And this really allows you to leverage legal products as a long-term business model rather than a response to a current situation or kind of a moment in time. So with all of that being said, I just wanted to mention as well that I think this is a particularly timely topic. Obviously we're experiencing an increasingly volatile financial environment. And I think creating legal products can really help you stand out in a crowded market, can help you reduce costs to delivering your services, and potentially even find new sources of revenue. So with that being said, let's take a look at how we can use technology and a product-focused mindset to create products that create unique value for our clients. So what is a legal product? Again, this is probably rehashing for most of you, but very simply, a legal product is a standardized client deliverable, or the unbundling of a bespoke legal service, as it's usually delivered, into a well-defined and scalable product offering. So like most products, but unlike most legal services, a legal product should have a well-defined scope, a clear price, and an ability for consumers to easily discover that product and purchase it. So nothing I said there is rocket science, but it is a really fundamental change from how most legal work is sold and delivered today. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, even if you're already aware of that as we step through this process. So now that we understand what a fundamental change this is from how most legal services are delivered, let's talk a little bit about why that matters. Why should we engage? Why should we even care about legal products in the first place? So this data is all sourced from the ABA study on the justice gap. But there, I think, is some really interesting data points here that I think make two really important points. And the first is an access to justice question, right? It's a social justice question. There are over 100 million Americans, both lower and middle income, that can't afford traditional legal representation and often just end up going pro se or not dealing with their legal problems. And I think that the 86% number here is indicative of that. 86% of civil legal problems reported by low-income Americans receive either insufficient or no legal assistance at all, right? So there is a big reason to do this, just from a sense of the fact that it's the right thing to do. But this middle number, I think, points out another really important element here, which is that money is being spent on legal services, even at the lower and middle income levels. It's just perhaps not enough to be able to enter into a traditional full service legal relationship. So legal products can not only be the right thing to do, but there's also clearly a huge addressable market here of folks whose needs are not being served, but who have money to spend. And again, I think that's important to consider as we step through and create our legal products and think about the customers that we're creating those legal products for, which is a great segue into understanding our customers, which is the first step in creating a product. So before we get our hands dirty writing, a summary or thinking about what that product is supposed to be, I think we really need to start with understanding the customer and their problem. So to do that, I like to go to Simon Sinek and say, start with why, right? Really understand what your customer's problem is and what their needs are. So I think to do that effectively, you really need to try to take the attorney hat off and try not to think about this through the lens of the legal service that you're providing. But instead, try to focus on the problem the customer has, who that customer is, and the unique value you can deliver by productizing the solution to that problem, which may not be purely legal services. I think that there's a really helpful product management framework that I stole from Coinbase that helps us really frame this exercise. And you'll see this framework again as we talk about how to craft a story around this product, because the story is really driven from this understanding of the customer. So for step one in deeply understanding your customer and their problem is just developing empathy, right? Who is this customer that you're building this for? What does their day-to-day life look like? From there, you need to understand what the problem that customer has is, right? If they don't have a problem, they're not going to give you any money to solve it. But once you understand who that customer is, developing a deep understanding of what that problem is that they're trying to solve is really the next step. And then from there, you need to think about why that customer hasn't been able to solve that problem on their own, right? Describe the conflict that customer is currently experiencing. And again, this is going to come in really handy as you later have to tell this product story. And then obviously the next step from there is solving that problem, right? And this is where you start to think about what your product does, how your product solves this customer's problem, and ideally how it does it in a way that creates unique value for that customer. So This might seem all relatively common sense, but I think it's important to kind of go through this exercise and make sure that you're touching on all of these things before you start to really think about what your product even is or does. Because if it doesn't start and end with the customer, it's probably not going to be successful in a hyper-competitive environment. So to flesh this out just a little bit, I'd like to use a simple example that I think is relatively easy to grasp and actually very, very common in the legal productization space, and that is filing for an uncontested divorce. So especially after the COVID-19 lockdowns, unfortunately, a lot of people are in this position, right, of needing to file for an uncontested divorce and go through the process and paperwork associated with that. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you know, that's a relatively simple legal procedure, but my guess would be that most or many of the people who engage in it are completely unfamiliar with what that process entails and what the potential associated costs might be. And that really leaves them in the position of trying to figure out how to navigate the process and paperwork themselves, pro se, or speaking to several different attorneys and then doing their best to compare the hourly rates and the perceived expertise of those attorneys to try to decide what the best path forward is for them. As I'm sure that it might occur to you, that scenario is very, very far from the kind of apples to apples comparison that most consumers expect when they go to buy something, especially something that's potentially as expensive as a divorce, right? Not that they're necessarily buying a divorce, but they're buying the solution to that divorce problem, right? So in this scenario, the client really has two relatively opaque options, right? They can go pro se without knowing the process, or they can engage an attorney without really knowing what the ultimate cost is. Neither of those solutions is perfect. That really leaves a problem unresolved. And in this case, it's that they don't have clarity into the process or the costs, depending upon which choice they make. So there's an opportunity there, right? The customer's problem has not been fully solved. Understanding that the client's needs extend beyond the legal work itself, I think, is really the key here. And understanding that your customer might benefit from an offering that makes it easy to understand what the cost is and what they are getting for their money really gives you the ability to craft a legal product that's far more compelling for your customer than a traditional service offering for which the scope and ultimate cost may not well be understood by the customer before they purchase it, if they purchase it at all. Because again, you're not just competing against other attorneys potentially, you're competing against doing nothing. You're competing against going pro se. So by empathizing with your customers and really understanding that their needs may extend beyond the legal work, you can create legal products that solve their problems in a uniquely valuable way. And you're going to hear that phrase a couple of times today, because I think that's really the key when it comes to creating really compelling legal products is how do they create unique value? Why are they different? Why do they stand out? So once you have that deep understanding of the customer's problem and the unique value you can provide in solving it, now you can set about creating your legal product. And as you do, I think it's important to consider both innovation and efficiency in the crafting of that product. And let me explain what I mean by that. So Professor Clayton Christensen has a bunch of great innovation quotes, but this was the one that I thought was the most relevant for this situation. Efficiency innovations do not help you create new markets. Only disruptive innovations can do that. Because again, we're not trying to do the same thing everybody else is doing. We're trying to do something fundamentally different. We're trying to create a disruptive innovation and fundamentally change the way that these legal services are delivered. So in the context of creating legal products, I think this means, again, you really can't focus on just doing something faster or cheaper, because that really is kind of doing the same thing everybody else is doing. Those are both great goals and should be an element of your product. Certainly, doing something faster and cheaper is always good, but I don't think it suffices in this scenario. I think it's perhaps more important to think about how you're going to do things differently. Again, faster and cheaper is great, but I think what's most fundamentally important is how you're going to do things differently. So you can use that deep understanding of your customers' needs to craft a legal product that acutely addresses those needs in a way that a traditional client relationship might not. Right? Whether that's providing potentially non-attorney resources as part of your product, using different pricing models that might better align with the customer's expectations or ability to pay, or just simply packaging legal services in a way that makes it easy for those with very little exposure to the legal world, very little legal experience to understand. That's where you can really think about this and bring your creativity and create a truly unique offering that, again, disrupts that traditional model of legal service delivery. Because if you're just doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, but a little bit faster and a little bit cheaper, it's really hard to stand out and make that customer understand why you're a fundamentally different and better choice. So taking that creative approach to combine your legal expertise with technology and a deep understanding of your customer, you can create products that have a unique value for those clients and really differentiate you from the competition, which, and I'm sorry to harp on this, may again just be going pro se, right? If we remember those 100 million Americans that can't afford traditional legal services, they are going pro se. That is the competition. So now that we've taken time to really understand our customer, understand that problem, and then craft a product that we think offers unique value in solving that problem, how do we market it? How do we sell it? And to do that, we're going to harness the power of storytelling. And nobody knows more about storytelling or product creation than Steve Jobs. There is a lot of power in stories. Anybody who's been in sales for more than a couple of years will tell you that the biggest thing you have in your arsenal is the ability to tell stories that connect with your customer. And those stories should help the customer connect with your vision and understand why your product should matter to them, right? You can talk until you're blue in the face about features or why you care about your product, but your customer may never care about any of that. So it's much more effective to tell a story, ideally where your customer may be the hero, to explain to your customer what that unique value is, why your product exists, and why they should care about it. And I think this framework, again, is really, really helpful in helping us do that. So this is the same framework that we use to help us understand the customer problem that we're solving. But fortunately, if we've taken the time to really empathize with our client and craft a unique offering, a lot of the work of telling that offering story has already been done, because we use this framework to help us develop the product in the first place. We're just, at this point, simply putting into words our vision of what the customer's need is, why the product addresses that need more effectively than other options available to them. Telling a compelling story that highlights that and highlights the benefits of your product, how it addresses those customers' needs, and what really differentiates it from other offerings in the space that are available to them, really helps your customer connect with your product and understand why it's different and why it holds a unique value to them. So I really think that you can use all the data you want, and data is great, but telling a story that your customer is the hero of, and I like to use the example, and I'm realizing as I'm saying this that would have been great to have a visual aid for this, so apologies for that. But I like to use the example of your customer being the hero, their problem being the dragon, and your product is the sword they're going to use to slay that dragon, right? Everybody likes to be the hero of their own story. So it's really just dependent upon you to figure out how to tell that story and make sure that your customer is the hero, and your product is a fundamental part of that hero's journey. But once we've marketed our product, we've come up with a great product story, our customers know it, they're buying it and they love it, that might seem like the end of the journey, right? You can pop your champagne and move on with your life. But as many of you who are longtime Gavel customers know, it's ideally not, right? You can make a great product, but what's a great product today might be completely inadequate tomorrow. So it's really important to iterate on your products and make sure that they stay viable long term. So we're going to talk a little bit about legal products as a long-term business model and how to keep them sustainable and viable in the long term. So creating legal products, I think, shouldn't be viewed as a one and done process. As I said before, I think it's better to think of this as an iterative approach where creating the product is just an early milestone in that overall process. But using an iterative approach really helps ensure the long-term viability of your product. And Eric Ries has a great quote around this. The only way to win is to learn faster than everybody else. And the way that you learn faster than anybody else is to elicit customer feedback, right? And there are a lot of different ways to do that. Obviously, the example I have up on screen that hopefully you're all familiar with, we do this a lot at Gavel, right? We really try to engage our customers and understand what would you like to see in the product? How does the product work for you? How does the product not work for you? And then take that feedback in and continually iterate to make sure that our product maintains value for our customers in the long term. But there are a lot of different examples of what this iterative process can look like. And it's not always major feature updates. It can be relatively simple things. We see Gavel clients doing this with their legal products by doing things like using the Gavel API to connect additional data sources that are just going to streamline the delivery of that product, right? Reduce cost on their end so they can make it more affordable for their end client. Or even just increasing the quality of the final delivered product by leveraging additional data, additional resources to increase the overall end value to the customer. Again, those might not be major feature updates, but it's those kinds of iterative changes that really allow you to keep the product viable long term. And it could be something that isn't really product related at all. It could be updating that story, right? The story that was effective a year ago may not still be effective today, even though the product is still very viable. So this could also be something as simple as changing the description of your product so it better aligns with what customer expectations currently are. But regardless of what this ends up looking like in the end, I think it's really, really important to have this be a process in the overall, have this be a part of the overall process or journey to continually gather feedback and improve your products so you can stay ahead of the competition and remain relevant in what is an ever-changing market. And I mentioned that I might be teasing a little bit of future functionality here. So on this topic of continuing to iterate and continuing to release new things that will keep your product viable, we are looking now in the near future at releasing this bundling functionality for Gavel that will allow you. So not only is this, I think, a good example because this is we're iterating, right? We're continuing to improve our products so that it remains viable for you. But this bundles functionality that allow you to bundle multiple services into one product offering also allows you to iterate on your products, right? So I think that this is a really synchronistic kind of example, but more to come on that in the relatively near future. Watch this space. But just in summary, to conclude here, legal products are a really powerful tool that can help you as attorneys and firms better meet clients' needs and stand out in a crowded market. But they can also help you reduce costs and drive new sources of revenue. So by understanding your clients' needs, considering both innovation and efficiency in the crafting of your legal product, using effective storytelling in the marketing of that product, and then continually gathering feedback and iterating on that product, you can create a legal product that really makes a difference. So my challenge to all of you is to consider embracing a product-centric mindset, taking the attorney hat off for just for a minute, and then putting your customers' needs at the forefront of everything you do. And to bring my man Simon Sinek back in, start with why, right? Start with that customer, start with their problem, and create legal products that truly matter. Thank you all for your time. We can open it up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Jon. That was absolutely amazing. Such a good flow between different things too, that I think make a lot of sense. I want to just quickly add two quick things before we open it up for questions. The first is that book I highly recommend that tracks along with the marketing approach around storytelling that Jon mentioned is StoryBrand Brand Script, which is one of the best books I've read on marketing by Donald Miller. And he talks about how, you know, that idea that your customer is the hero, you are the guide. I hadn't heard that their product is the sword, so I like that. And the problem is the dragon. But this idea around storytelling, and he gives some great examples. So that's something to check out. And he has a lot of free resources as well. The second thing I wanted to just quickly add is that idea around empathy that also requires a lot of humility. So, you know, as lawyers, we're often trained to be the one who knows everything in the room. And sometimes when you're dealing with a client and you're trying to figure out what their issue is, it can almost feel awkward and uncomfortable because they're holding the answer that you need to help them. So anyway, that's just to say, I just wanted to add those two quick things. And one quick question to kick us off is, how much time do you feel should be spent in that sort of research stage before you start actually executing? And then how much do you think, like, when is it good enough to sort of launch? Because in the past, I think there was a question for Paul Sutton, one of our past speakers, who was asked around, like, when you launch something and it's not perfect, it can affect like your reputation and you want it to do what it's supposed to do. So what do you feel like how would you answer that? I feel like, how much time do you spend in that research stage, and when is your product actually good enough to launch?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brittany. And I think it's a great question because it's something that it's really hard to attach metrics to, right? This is kind of, I think, a little bit more of a question of you kind of know it when you see it. But I think that a good measure for this might be, can you explain your customer and their problem to somebody else? If you can do that to somebody who has zero exposure to this, and is coming in completely cold, then I think that you probably understand that customer and their problem. And then taking that further, if you can explain to somebody who's coming in completely cold, your customer, their problem, and succinctly, give an elevator pitch for why your product solves that problem, I think you're probably pretty close to being there.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for audience questions really quickly. And then if there aren't any, we will move on, but I'll just give you a second. You can raise your hand or just unmute. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this on up. And if you, in the meantime, just if you think of a question, you can just stop me and we will address it. So thank you again to Jon for this amazing presentation. And before we wrap up, just a few announcements from Jon. He's lucky because he gets to go to fun conferences and meet Gavel clients in person and take them out to dinner. So I'm super jealous, but he'll be representing Gavel at the ALA Annual Expo. And I think, Trisha, you're going to be there too, right?
Yes, I'll be there as well.
So lucky. Okay. And then he's also going to be at the ARC National Summit. So if you'll be there too, give him a shout, say hello. He's going to be acting as the event co-chair as well. And Gavel's going to be sponsoring and exhibiting at both of those. So from my side, we, as I mentioned, have Gavel certification courses at Chromium Academy. So we have started to do live cohorts. So we're going into core 2. So if you'd like to join us for basics week, and you can also just join during your week. So if you are taking the full course, you can do basic, silver, and gold. If you're just doing test out, you just join during your week. But we're going to be starting core 2 on Thursday, May 11th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And you can find out more information here or reach out to me at brittany@gavel.io. And then from Gavel, some news is that, as Jon mentioned, we're working on the big billing and storefront features coming up, that bundling feature. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to Dorna. And I think last time you were mentioning that you have some early users, beta users, who can check that out. Also, there is a summer internship for the customer service team. So if you're interested in that, or if you know a law student or somebody who's in pre-law studies who might be interested in working with the Gavel team, you can let Trisha know. And it's also on our Gavel Career Center page. And then finally, there have been some really great resources that the customer service team has been putting out in the Slack community. So do check those out. They are something that I haven't tried before, like redacting within your workflow. I've obviously tried custom CSS and things like that, but for anyone who's newer or who hasn't tried these in a while, it's good to kind of revisit some of these, and they are getting updated all the time as the platform changes as well. And then a quick reminder that we do have that wish list that Jon showed everyone. So you can put your different feedback and feature requests on there. And we do, or the team does, take everything very seriously, and they do become real features. So, so do put your feedback there. And if you need any support, there is a Calendly page that you can just reach out to the team and schedule a one-to-one time, 30 minutes or an hour. And then just join us in the Slack community. It's very active. And if you'd like your app or legal product that you create and you want to be able to sell that on the Gavel Marketplace, just let us know and we'll get that on there for you as well. So we host these lightning talks on the last Thursday of each month, except for November and December. The next one will take place on May 25th at 9:15 a.m. And we'll be hearing from Alex Bainab, who is an estates and corporate lawyer and the owner of Contrast Law. So he's going to be discussing integrating Clio with Gavel, a practical dive into the everyday tech stack of a modern lawyer. And you can register for that and future lightning talks on our Eventbrite page, the same way that you did today. I'm really excited because actually Alex is here with us today and will be introducing himself during the speed networking portion. So do stay on to meet him. And he's going to be actually like sharing his screen and showing us how to integrate these things together and how he uses this at an everyday basis. So that concludes our main portion of the lightning talk for today. A big thank you to Jon for sharing his insights with us. So we're going to be transitioning to that 5 minutes of speed networking, as I mentioned. So if you'd like to stay on for that, please do. If you need to go, no problem at all. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.